everybody, it's James here from goodguitarist.com, and in today's lesson I'm going to show you how to play What About Us by Pink. Now, this song can be quite simple. It is just 3 chords, and they're 3 pretty basic chords: E minor, C, and G. Those are among, most people's first 5 chords that they learn. They're definitely going to be in there. We're going to spice it up a little by adding a bit of a chord melody to it, like you just saw in the demo there. But we're also going to learn how to strum it with a pattern, so you can kind of scale it up to your level. And before we get started, I just want to quickly mention that if you want to play along to the original recording, which I highly recommend, I recommend you do that with every single song you ever learn, you need to put a capo on the 1st fret. For this lesson, we're not going to do that. We're going to just go au naturel. We're going to leave it without the capo. But if you want to play along with the original recording, all you got to do is put a capo on the 1st fret and then pretend that that's where the guitar starts. It's pretty simple. All right, so let's take a look at the chord shapes first. Our first chord is E minor. Then we have a C chord. And then we have a G chord. And if you need any help with those chord shapes, I have a couple resources for you. There's my free ebook, which is free for all my subscribers, and it goes over all the basics. It has all the diagrams and all that stuff. But if you want to be guided through all that stuff, like if you're having trouble making fast chord switches or your strumming's not coming together, I do have a premium beginner's course that's also available. I'll put links to both of those down below. So check either of those out if you need help with anything along the way, not just those chord shapes. And now that we know the chord shapes, let's take a look at the chord melody. I'll play it for you really slowly. And you might be wondering, why did we learn those chord shapes if all I'm doing is picking 2 notes? And you kind of do have a point. You could play it as simply as this, just going. Just 2 fingers. 2 fingers again. 2 fingers. And that's totally fine, but in the future, if you want to expand on it and maybe combine the melody with the strumming or something like that, you'll be way more prepared for that. Anyways, the picking and rhythm, to go with our chords is pretty simple when you break it down. We're going to go chord by chord. First on our E minor chord. So I have my E minor shape, and then I'm using my pinky to play the 3rd fret of the highest string. And I'm going to pluck the D string with my thumb and the highest string with, it doesn't really matter. You can use your ring finger, your middle finger, even your 1st finger. Anyways, we pluck them both together. Then we pluck this one. And then we do a smack. So together, top one, smack. And for the smack, I'm literally just using the side of my thumb, just making a little bit of contact. I'm not exploding my guitar with my hand. I'm just making a little bit of contact just to get a nice little sound. Anyways, we do that. And then we change to the 2nd fret. So instead of using my pinky on the 3rd, I'm using my ring finger on the 2nd fret of the highest string, plucking the same 2 strings in the same way. So together, and then the high one. And then I take off that finger and I pluck those 2 strings. So really slowly, motion by motion. And the tricky part isn't the coordination. It's not like picking the right note at the right time. You can just look on the screen and figure that out if you go through it step by step. What I find most people have trouble with is getting the rhythm correct. And to do that, we have to count it out. And this one has a 16th note rhythm, which means we divide every measure into 16 bits. When you divide a measure into quarter notes, which you might have heard of, you're dividing it into 4 parts, into quarters, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 parts. And that's the counting that we're all used to. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the stuff that we're all used to. But when we divide it further, between the number 1 and the number 2, we could add some beats. We can add a few more. We could go 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. That's 4 times 4. That's 16 beats that we're putting into a single measure. So we're subdividing our counting into 16th notes. And we go 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. And I recommend just getting used to counting that out steadily first. That's going to be the first step to kind of get your body in the rhythm, get your internal metronome going. Once you have that, we can figure out where each of these motions lands in the context of the rhythm of the counting. So we start off 1 E and A. So 1 E and A. Then the smack happens right on beat 2. So 1 E and A 2. 1 E and A 2. And I recommend doing it just like I'm doing it. You just add one little bit, then we're going to add another bit until you can do the whole thing, right? So let's add the next step here. So 1 E and A 2 and 1 E and a 2 E and. So that's the first bit. Now let's start on the and of 2 on that stroke that we just finished on, and then go from there and learn the rest of it. So 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a. So 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a. Now all we have to do is add that last stroke. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. And this is probably still going to be too quick for you. What you need to do is count it out in your own time. Even if you're going like 1 E and 2 E and, just getting it correct. It doesn't have to be perfect right away. And the more you do it, the more you'll be able to count it out and play it. And, for some people, you can just pick the rhythm out with your ear and it's fine. But when you're putting together this much coordination stuff, the counting is usually what makes the difference. Anyways, once you have both those halves, we can try to count out the whole thing super duper slowly. 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. So that's your first goal, is to be able to play that with the counting. It doesn't matter how slow, you just want it to be accurate. And once you have that, it's actually really easy to get the rest of them together because they all follow the exact same rhythm, the exact same coordination. We're just changing what notes we're plucking. Otherwise, it's exactly the same. So moving on to the C chord, we have our C shape. Our thumb is now going to be on the A string because that's the root of the C chord. And we're still picking the high string. We're going to go. So it all lines up the same way. We're just picking a few different notes. First we go. So I pluck them together, top string, smack, just like we did before, same counting and everything. Then I'm gonna put my pinky down on the 3rd fret of the B string, and I'm gonna go, so I have to, change what string I'm plucking now. And that means that instead of plucking the highest string, now I have to pluck the 2nd string, but my thumb is still on the same one. We do it together, top note. Then I take off my pinky and I pluck both those notes together. And with the counting, 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and finally, we're gonna apply that exact same concept to the G chord. And for this, instead of playing my G like I normally would, I'm gonna play it just by placing my ring finger on the 3rd fret of the lowest string. And that's it. That's all I gotta do. Because don't know if you noticed, but pretty much half the strings are already in the G chord. You know, there's a lot of open strings in it anyways. And this one's pretty easy. You're going to be plucking the lowest string and the second string, the second thinnest string. We do them together, just the top one, smack. Then we put our first finger down on the first fret of the B string. So we did it together, and then the high one. Then we take that finger off, and we just pluck those two strings. And we do that 2 times, so. And when you put all that together, you get this. So take your time and, work that out. And when you're ready, we can try it together a few times, nice and slow. Here we go. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and last time. All right, so that's what I would do during the intro and the verses of the song. All the quiet parts, and you can clearly hear in the recording that like melody on a keyboard, that's when I would do that. And then during the choruses, when the beat kind of comes in and the song picks up, I would strum those chords instead. So let's take a look at how to do that. Our chord order is exactly the same. It's the same 3 chords the whole time in this song. The strumming pattern that we're gonna do sounds like this. And that's a bit of a longer one. 3 and 4 and. So the best way to put that together is to divide it up into a couple pieces. First, we go down, down, up, mute, down. 3, 4. Down, down, up, mute, down. Just try that a few times, and saying it helps out so much. Saying it out loud. Down, down, up, mute, down. Down, down, up, mute, down. And with the counting, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So work that out, and the second half goes like this. Miss, up, down, 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 up. 3, 4. Miss, up, down, 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 up. That miss is really important, to say it and to acknowledge that beat, because that's a main beat. And when it's missing, it feels kind of weird. So by saying it out loud, we're still acknowledging the beat, and it helps us get the following bits of the strumming pattern correct, or else they might shift forward a bit and your whole time thing is off. Anyways, when we put that together, it goes like this, super slowly with the counting. 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And And if you're having trouble with this strumming pattern, the first thing I would do is eliminate those last two strokes, that down up at the very end. That's kind of something that I would add back later because it happens as we're switching chords. Like once you speed it up, so as I'm making the transition from, say, E minor to C, that's when I'm doing that down up. And, if you just ignore it, still sounds fine. It's not like you can tell that it's missing. It's just a little final touch. And if you're still having trouble, I have two resources I've already mentioned, my free ebook and my course. Check those out, that might help you too. Otherwise, we're gonna strum this with the chords. It's really straightforward. We do it one time on E minor, one time on C, and then we do it 2 times on G, over and over and over again. And that's it. You either do the first thing I showed you or that. It's the whole song. Anyways, let's try that together a little bit slower than the original recording. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so that's all the parts of the song. All you got to do now is get good at changing between one or the other. So you do this bit like 4 times. Let's pretend this is the 4th time. Then I would start strumming. And if you can't go from one to the other, you just have to work on that transition. Don't practice the whole section. Just go to the very end of it. Go right to that G chord. And just work on that part, that last measure of G. And then you have to get good at going from the strumming part back into the picking. So we'd end the strumming on a G chord. So just practice that a whole bunch, those transition points, and then you should have no problem putting this all together. Anyways, that's all there is to it. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. If you need any extra help, don't forget about my free ebook and my beginner's course. Otherwise, have fun practicing, and I'll see you soon.